Keith, thanks so much for your time. I mean, quite a lot of shock that South Africa woke up to regarding the finance minister. Last week, he apologized for not being honest. Today, we're hearing reports that he wants to take it even further and heed to calls for him to resign. How are you reading this situation?
Well, I mean, he's a very honorable guy. So he came back upon request. So he's not power hungry at all. So I think he came with a very clean reputation. I guess he feels that's been weakened a little bit. But I think he's always been willing to fall on his sword. Look what he did for us back 2-3 years ago. He fell on his sword. So this is his character. The bottom line, he's a very honest guy, and I think we're feeling very bad about this. But we're in a world where you have to be beyond and beyond, and now he's finding he's getting himself caught out for some meetings that seem to be pretty harmless.
I mean, you worked with him at Treasury many years ago. Take us through that.
Well, I dealt with him. I used to do the presentations for the Treasury on tax issues when he was in the Senate Finance Committee, the Standing Committee on Finance. He was a very honorable person then. He was very fair, very open, very willing to listen. Then when he joined the Treasury as Deputy Minister, that's when I was there at the time. And there were times we had budget meetings and others when he was there. But he never came with a personal agenda. He basically wanted what was good for the country. And I think that's what he's trying to do here. He's trying to be a beyond reproach. And I think he feels a little sad that he doesn't look as clean. But I frankly don't think he did anything. But it's about perceptions now, not reality.
I mean, many would say that if you didn't do anything, why run? But I suppose the question is as well, previously when he had been asked about his encounters with the Gupta family, he said no, he just saw them in passing once or twice. I mean, a blatant lie. I don't know. Or why do you think he'd do that?
Well, I guess to be honest with you, meeting with people is not a crime. It is a free country, and you're allowed to freely engage with people. I'm not sure why he lied about that. Maybe he viewed it as inconsequential. There is no evidence that he's taken any money, so it was not consequential. But the point is, I think what's bothering him now is more perceptions. He was beyond clean, and now just being seen with the Guptas, and you see a lot of this, if you've just been seen with them now you're tainted. But unfortunately, this was a very difficult time when he was Deputy Minister. We had a president who was pretty much telling you, you need to meet these people. And I think people met the Guptas just because they had to. That didn't necessarily mean they did anything. And indeed, I think you consistently see in his record that while he met with them, he refused to cave in repeatedly. Now, that took a lot of integrity because he knew his job was at stake. I don't think a lot of people would have done that. But again, there's a certain moral character that you see in him that he, again, wants to be above reproach and he wants to be beyond perception. And I think there's a certain sense of guilt in that. But I don't think there's any bad activity, really, and I think that's really the issue here, is just an association, a meeting with the Guptas, enough to make you criminal. And I think that's a little unfair. But again, we're in a world of perceptions now, and you know, in politics, perceptions become far more damaging than reality.
Do you think the president should actually give him his request to relieve him of his duties?
Well, I think the real issue for him is, does the Minister of Finance want to stay on? So I think if I'm the president, I would say you have always been upstanding, you've always been good and moral, and you've always been on my side. The only issue is have you lost the will to continue? And he might have, I don't know. And I think that's the only issue I would have for the president. And I would hate to see that a man of such honesty is besmirched by such a minor detail. Unfortunately, these things happen, and I don't, you know, I think that would be very unfortunate. But he might do it just out of political perceptions.
I mean, some might say not minor in the context in which we're in right now, with this damning evidence of the extent of state capture and the looting of taxpayers' money. But my thing is, perhaps him stepping down could set a precedent, because in South African politics, African politics at that, we've never really seen our leaders take accountability and take the fall when they do wrong, which he has. So perhaps that could be a positive thing, given now that some are even saying in some corners that this could pave the way for ministers like the Social Development Minister, or former Social Development Minister, Minister of Women now, Batabile Dlamini. We've also got the Home Affairs Minister, Marisu Gigaba, also tainted to step down if Nene goes first.
Well, I think my only problem is that when you're very moral, you'll do the moral thing. I don't, you know, without getting to specific ministers, the ministers who have been corrupted And the people who have been corrupted, they're not going to do the moral thing.
Sure.
So those people you're going to have to fire. Now maybe the answer is okay, well, if Nene steps down for his connections, the president should force all of those who are similarly connected to step down. The problem is they're not going to do it voluntarily, and that's the difficulty. So the innocent lives on this standard, and the guilty lives on a different standard, and that's not fair. And frankly, we're taking out our best, and we're not really getting rid of our worst, and that's a real problem.
I mean, how do you imagine morale is like there at National Treasury? You've seen so many finance ministers walking in and out the door. How do you think staff are dealing with all of this?
Well, look, I think, as people talk about SARS being damaged, I think Treasury's been damaged. I think Treasury also, and when I was there, I think we all had a great pride in Treasury, and I believe a lot of people there today still have great pride in Treasury. I think people, when they lost Nene, I think that was a big shock. And then the events that followed, there was a lot of unhappiness. And a lot of people at Treasury were very uncomfortable with what was going on, especially, again, over the nuclear deal, which was being pushed very, very hard. I think a lot of people wanted Nene to return because they felt very good about him, and I think they like him. So it's not only losing a minister, but losing a friend who believes in their cause. So I'm sure their morale is not high, and I think part of the problem, again, with Treasury is they are actually trying to be beyond reproach, and they're actually restricting their own options for living for a standard that nobody else is living to. And one of the difficulties we do have at the Treasury is the Treasury is holding the purse and no one else is. And this has been a problem for a very long time. So a weak Treasury and a weak finance minister is unable to do that. So unfortunately, the question is will Nene be strong enough to continue? I don't think he's done anything wrong. But does he have the political strength to continue? And if not, we need somebody strong there because we really got to rein in the other departments. Government has become too big.
Of course, Keith, we didn't touch on the contentious loan that he gave to his son when he was the chair of the Public Investment Corporation, which some are questioning. But we'll leave it there for now as we watch the story unfold. That was Keith Engel, who is the director at SAIT.